Welcome to another Tuesday tutorial, and today we're going to deal with negative people. They're the mood hoovers in your organisation. They're the ones who are forever sucking the life out of things. You may have come across them either in your current organisation or perhaps somewhere along your career. But generally they're always negative, they're always upset with things. And so we're going to introduce this character here. And he's our angry person. He's never happy. He's never happy with either himself, with his team, or life in general. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how we can actually deal with this type of person. And once dealt with, how that can actually help you improve your performance and the performance of your team as well. Now, we've got a bit of a famous quote here from some scientist. He talks about how you need to stay away from negative people because they have a problem for every solution. And that's so true. You think about that yourself in terms of those people that you've come across along the way. Now, think about the people who you currently surround yourself with, and guess what? You're an average of those closest to you. And whether it's the closest 5, 6 or 7 people, if they're thinking negative thoughts, then the chances are you'll be thinking those negative thoughts as well. If the closest people you surround yourself with are thinking positive thoughts, then guess what? You'll be thinking more positive thoughts. Which one would you rather be surround yourself with? I know which one I would rather surround myself by. Think about your family, your friends, your colleagues, your customers. Think about your social media, who you spend most time with. Think about your news feed. So think about what you're reading every day. What type of news you're consuming consistently. All have a big influence on your own kind of mindset. Now, what we're going to do is just talk a bit about the normal distribution. Now, this is a really kind of simple tool that explains how relationships can be spread throughout. And if you think about your normal distribution and your own relationships, they'll typically follow this kind of curve. You'll have some relationships that are poor at one end, kind of here. You'll have some that are perhaps excellent at the other end, and the vast majority of your relationships will be somewhere in the middle. Now, if we're to use the EGSP framework, we've got poor at one end, that'll be a minority. You'll have satisfactory relationships, kind of somewhere in the middle. You'll also have good relationships, just beyond the middle. And on the far side, you'll have those excellent relationships. And the vast majority will be somewhere in the middle. Now, if you think about negative people, where they would lie, they would typically be poor. So negative people will always hold us back. If we've got those relationships there, they're the ones who are forever kind of you're dragging us back, you're pulling us down. They take great delight in others not achieving things. So that's something kind of bear in mind. Now, once we've actually dealt with those negative people and almost kind of cut them loose, then we'll actually kind of naturally, our performance will improve. We'll naturally gravitate and take things forward. So deal with negative people and we can actually move things forward. Now, on our leadership development program, we talk about 3 different ways we can actually deal with negative people. So we'll go into it in quite a lot of detail. We go through our 6 thinking hats, which is inspired by Edward de Bono. We have our own EGSP framework, and then we also go into a galaxy of stars. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And it's all about influence and attitude. And we're going to introduce a very simple matrix that you can use to deal with negative people. Now, this tool is one that I first came across 20 years ago by a manager at the time called George Farrell. Now, George, if you're listening, if you're watching, thanks very much. I did pay attention. And not only did I use it back in the day, but this tool I've used in pretty much every organisation I've worked at since. So it's a real kind of top tool to take away. And what we'll do is introduce this 2x2 matrix. It's a very simple matrix. We have attitude on one axis and influence on the other. So on the y-axis, that's the vertical axis, we have low influence and high influence. And along the x-axis, we have good attitude on one side and bad attitude on the other. And what we'll do is we'll walk through each of these 4 boxes in turn and see how they relate to you and your team. And so each box has a name, and we'll go through each of these names. And I'm sure you'll be wanting to kind of label either yourself or your colleagues in one of those 4 boxes. So let's go through them. In the bottom right-hand corner, we have our team players. Now they're the people who have a good attitude, but a low influence. They're good people to have around, and we want them. They're our team players. They're always looking out for each other. They've got a good attitude on life, a good outlook on life. They're the ones who we want in our side. So they're good people. Next up, we have our stars. They're the movers and shakers. They're the ones who are really taking things forward. They have a good attitude, and they also have a high influence. So they're highly influential, and they'll take people with them. So good attitude, high influence. We like stars. They're the people kind of we want to breed. We then have our well poisoners. Now these are people with bad attitude, but they've also got a high influence. So they've got that toxic kind of attitude. They've got that negative attitude, but they're influential with it. So they'll bring people, they'll pull people down, and they've got a large sway within your organisation. They're heavily influential within your organisation. So they're people we really need to be mindful of. They have lots of power, either soft power within your organisation. And then lastly, we have our walking dead. And they're the people with a bad attitude and a low influence. Now they're the people who are forever kind of walking around with their heads down, pulling people down, very negative. Again, they've got that toxic attitude. And they're people we don't want in our organisations. And I'm sure when you look at these 4 types of people, they're the people you wouldn't want in your organisation too. And so, what we're going to do? Well, what we look for are, we're trying to create this galaxy of stars. Now, if you think about our team players, some of our team players will naturally rise to be stars. Now, not every team player will become a star, but some of them will. And they're the ones we want to kind of nurture and look after. We then have the stars, great, they're the ones who are already there, going on to become a brighter star. The well poisoners, they're a really interesting one. Now, if we can change their attitude from bad to good, then the well poisoners can become a star. But they need to think about their own attitude and how they can change their outlook. If they can't, then we need to sort them out. And we need to kind of go through either performance management or other ways to actually deal with their performance. And then the walking dead, absolutely, we don't want them in the organisation. Because if you want to take your team, your organisation forward, you can't afford to have walking dead. They're the people who don't want to be there. They're forever kind of bringing people down. And absolutely, we don't want those in our organisations. So well poisoners, we can do something with. Team players, we can try and promote them, and we're trying to create that galaxy of stars. Now, how can we create that galaxy? Well, firstly, you need to kind of reflect on this matrix yourself. So think about influence, think about attitude, and think about who you'd put in each one of those boxes. And what would be good is if you can try and explain this model to others, because we learn best when we teach it back. So think about this model, draw it out yourself, sketch it out, and then present it to somebody else and see if they get it. And that will really kind of demonstrate your understanding too. Then what we need to do is kind of call out poor. So call out those toxic relationships, call out those bad attitudes, those negative people. Once you've got it very clear in your head, then it becomes very obvious. You now have this framework, this mental model about dealing with negative people, those poor relationships. Identify your team players. So think about those who you surround yourself with. Some will always be team players. Some you'll want to encourage and make them stars. You look after them. They're the ones you want to encourage to become future stars. Manage the expectations of yourself and others, and think about where you fit in those 4 boxes. Think about your team and think about your organisation as well. Now, some kind of key points to take away then. Negative people can help. So it's a key point, and we haven't really touched on it, but the negative people tend to be kind of risk averse, and that can help you in certain situations. But if they've got a poor attitude, then they've got no place in your organisation or any organisation. If you want to be truly successful, you can't have that poor attitude. You need to understand the importance of energy in people, both positive and negative, and think about that normal distribution. If you've got a positive energy, that'll take you forward. If you've got a negative energy you're surrounding yourself with, that'll forever pull you back. So kind of really think about that. There you've got the negative, the negativity. That's that vicious circle you'll kind of get yourself in, as opposed to surround yourself with positivity, and you have this virtuous circle of success. We all want team players and stars. That's how you really move things forward. And lastly there, you're an average of those closest to you. So choose wisely. And that's it. That's our Tuesday tutorial. It was all to do with kind of negative people and how once you've actually dealt with them, then that can help you improve your performance too. I hope you've enjoyed what you've kind of seen so far. This is just one of a series of Tuesday tutorials that every week I'll be releasing something similar to this on YouTube and on our own website as well. My name's Bob Buckley. I'm from 12 Scholars. If you like what you're seeing, do give us a thumbs up or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks so much for tuning in, and look forward to seeing you next time.